and I am the head of exhibitions and publications at the McMichael. Thanks so much for joining us this evening for a virtual curatorial talk, spurred on by the opening of our latest exhibition, Margaux Williamson Interiors, guest curated for us by Jessica Bradley. I will begin with a land acknowledgement. The McMichael Canadian Art Collection is located on the original lands of the Ojibwe Anishinaabe people. It is uniquely situated along the Carrying Place Trail, which historically provided an integral connection for Indigenous people between Ontario's Lakeshore and the Lake Simcoe Georgian Bay region. As an institution, McMichael recognizes the importance of acknowledging the original territories of the Ojibwe Anishinaabe First Nations people and other Indigenous nations. Before we begin, I'll say three short things. Firstly, this talk is being recorded. If you know of a friend or family member who would love to be here with us, send them the link to register and join us right now, or look for the recording of this talk on our YouTube channel. Secondly, we've reserved some time at the end for questions. So type your questions into the Q&A or to the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. Thirdly, we love doing these talks virtually and making them free to access to audiences across Canada and beyond. If you are not already among our family of supporters, I hope you might be moved tonight to join our Merry Band. Our members and supporters get access to even more special content, advance notice of all our goings on, and invitations to exclusive occasions. To become a member or supporter of the McMichael, visit our website and click the box marked join, or I think on the next slide, there will be lots of easy ways to connect with us to support or join. You can also support the McMichael by visiting us. We're open 6 days a week. Tickets are still timed entry and available on our website. You can also support us by buying our books. We've been very busy over the last 2 years making great books about Canadian art. And the latest addition to this roster is the book accompanying, thank you, Sarah, accompanying Margaux Williamson exhibition. I don't have a copy. It is a great and wonderful book. It features essays by guest curator Jessica Bradley, an essay by novelist Ben Lerner, an interview between Margaux and her dear friend, the great Toronto writer Sheila Heti, and a foreword by Sarah. So get it while it's hot. It's only available in the McMichael shop. So I'll introduce our panel. Many of you already know our chief curator, Sarah Milroy. She is one of our country's most respected public voices and champions of Canadian art. She has been our chief curator since 2018, and in those 3 short years has curated or co-curated no less than a dozen exhibitions for McMichael, including our current monumental exhibition, Uninvited, Canadian Women Artists in the Modern Moment, showcasing Canadian women artists of the early 20th century. Speaking of our country's most respected public voices and champions of Canadian art, allow me to introduce Jessica Bradley, an independent curator based in Toronto. She served as curator of contemporary art at the Art Gallery of Ontario, as associate curator of contemporary art at the National Gallery of Canada. She was commissioner of Canada's representation at the Venice Biennale 3 times, and founded her own commercial gallery in Toronto in 2005, where for over a decade, she mounted more than 80 exhibitions featuring a rising generation of artists. This is McMichael's second collaboration with her in recent years. She curated an exhibition of work by the Montreal artist Marie-Claire Blais with us in 2019. We so love working with you, so thanks for being with us again, Jessica. And finally, Margaux Williamson. We feel so fortunate to work with you. Margaux is a painter who has been in Toronto for over 20 years. She's very active in the city's community of writers, artists, and musicians. She began exhibiting her paintings in the mid-2000s at Catherine Mulheron Gallery in Toronto. Margaux's work has been shown in New York, in LA, in London. She's been artist in residence at the Klondike Institute of Art and Culture in Dawson City, Yukon, the Art Gallery of Ontario, and the MacDowell in Peterborough, New Hampshire. Her work has received press coverage from a wide range of sources, including Canadian Art, the Globe and Mail, the New York Times, Frieze, and The Believer. In 2021, White Cube London, UK mounted an online exhibition of her recent paintings. And this show with McMichael is her first solo museum show. It's hard to believe, but it's true. So with those introductions, I will pass the baton to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Jen. And what a pleasure to have everyone with us again tonight. I'm going to be a very happy fly on the wall tonight, with Jessica taking the helm with a conversation with Margaux this evening. But before I do, I just want to express my deep gratitude to Jessica for her incredible solidarity over the past, well, 30 years of my life, I guess at least, but also particularly the last 3 years, which have, included a lot of challenges of stepping up into museum work in a more direct way. And she's such an incredible mentor and friend to me. I owe her so much. So to have her working at the McMichael is just, it's an honor for me and for all of us at the institution. And Margaux, I fell hard for you the first painting I saw, which was, many years ago, one of the paintings of a woman slumped over the bar at the Matador, that great Toronto landmark. And I've been thinking ever since, how come Margaux can make Toronto look so cool? Because you do. And the work is really unlike anything that I see anywhere, but it has this, we'll talk about maybe a little bit later if I buzz from my fly spot on the wall just for a few moments to talk about the Canadian themes in the work. But before we do that, I'd like to hand over the evening to my wonderful friend Jessica, who will take us through her journey with Margaux Williamson.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for your generous comments. I thought we'd start that the exhibition is not, inspired by some kind of chronological rationale, but I think that in fact that in the 33 works in the show, about a third of them were done in the last 5 years. But it's the way in her work Margaux weaves, I don't even call them themes really, but a sense in the work of that reading and thinking are important, that interior is not just an inhabited space, but that there's an interiority of the mind, even of the psyche. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of these works, some of these sensibilities that run through quite early works in the show right to the last works in the show. And on the way, we'll ask you, Margaux, to tell us more about how you make your work, and we can return to that at several points in this exchange. So I wanted to bring up the first image, which is Painting to Moby Dick from 2006. So it's really one of the earliest works in the show. And there's a literary reference right there. And of course, Melville's wonderful book was an allegory of chasing what one cannot really capture. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, Margaux. It's a long time ago.
I'm so sorry. I was just adjusting my screen.
That's okay.
What's that you said about?
Well, I'm just saying that, in this painting, you already make a literary reference by calling it Painting to Moby Dick. So there's that. But then in the next, because we can talk about them more or less together, in the next image.
Hold on 1 second. We're just having a little technical.
Yeah, weeds. Don't have to talk about both of them, but maybe this sense in both of them of, in the first one in Painting to Moby Dick, of reading, and there's actually a figure sitting on the bed reading. And in this one, weeds, so clearly about thinking, staring out the window, being in another kind of mental space. And they're both from 2006. I made
Painting to Moby Dick while I was listening to my computer read Moby Dick aloud, but it was a long time ago, so it was just a computer generated voice, so it was almost unbearable to listen to. But
oh god, strange experience.
Yeah, I was so excited. I was so excited to hear the voice of the computer. Yeah, I guess just always that I think I started out painting sort of figures overwhelmed by a space, a little bit immobile, a little bit not in charge,
There's something else that happens here too that recurs in quite a few of a number of your paintings, and that is the painting within the painting. So I'm never sure in this work whether on the left we're looking out a window to an actual landscape beyond, and then there are this kind of salon hang of a lot of other paintings of trees.
The other thing I find in this picture that's I've never noticed until this moment is this strange kind of sense of rising seawater. I mean,
Yeah.
the carpet is this kind of surging, and we're going to see some other surging bodies of water and trees later in the show, but there's something quite wild about that, whatever that is. I guess it's the carpet on one level, but it's something else as well. You experience it as something else rising that's dark,
Yeah.
It's a
And it
very
was, I
mysterious
think
picture.
this sense of being young in the world and not being able to make any changes. So, these pictures of trees that are painted and the rising sea levels. Yeah, I started out feeling a little defeated, but these pictures of these paintings of sort of figuring out that situation a little bit.
Mhm.
And the weeds is quite similar. It's
Mhm.
We could go to that image if you want, the next image.
There
Does
seems
that
to be
give
a
you
little
shot?
delay. There we go.
go.
Yeah. Sometimes I
Uh,
find, Jen, just a little note, if I click on the gray surface before I want to advance it, sometimes that helps.
Thank you.
Anyway, one of my tricks, I've had this happen to be for sure. So
Yeah, the
you're in
mysteries
good
of
company.
technology.
The weeds one, I think in that series is probably the only one that's inside.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's just also this idea of being comfortable or a slacker and, this sort of catastrophe or beauty going on outside. Yeah, it was when I started painting, I painted more, I think, more narrative-esque.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
I just painted what I felt, and then I sort of moved to being a little bit more direct and a bit more directly narrative, where I became a painter trying to do something
Yeah.
instead of representing a figure being overwhelmed doing nothing. I mean, I'm only painting, but it's something, I guess.
Sure is.
I wanted to get to, because it starts to recur more and more in your work, is the importance of language. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to quote you. Excuse me if I forgive any paraphrasing. And you said at one time, I need words, especially other people's words. But a lot of the time, words can seem really oppressive to me, overused and overvalued. It makes sense to me that I'm a painter. And it seems like a lot of people still don't quite understand how valuable painting is, the kind of intelligence, presence, and attention one can have without words, or one can create without words. So for me, in those thoughts, there's this interesting, almost an ambivalence between the need for words, and I know that you write yourself, and perhaps your community of friends are more writers than, I'm pretty sure there are more writers and filmmakers than there are painters. And at the same time, you realize that, or you feel that words, painting and images can do something that words simply can't. So there are these parallel ways of getting to meaning, and one doesn't really substitute for the other. Can you address that?
Yeah, just someone mentioned my audio, so there's a little bit of feedback. Is it okay for you guys?
There's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we can deal with it. I think it's with us.
We'll survive. You have a little bit of computer voice.
Just a soupçon.
Just a bit.
Is that any better at all?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, much better.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think I have a confused relationship with writing and painting. I think I thought I finally, because I do make a lot of notes, and words are usually a big part of my titles or sentences and thoughts. And then I suddenly felt free of it with these last paintings. I was like, oh, they're finally free of words. And I did want a refuge from words, like I just wanted to be away from them. And then I think it was Jessica that pointed out, like, oh, you've written like 200 pages over here. I was like,
Yeah, you're keeping the words in one place now, and and writing quite intensively these days. But I want to say that in the exhibition, visitors to the exhibition will see that we have two large tables of your notes and clippings and tiny little sketches and ideas, and it's just a wonderful kind of conglomeration of the sorts of things that less so recently, but that you over the years have collected and then sort of filed them under topics, and I think that in saying that, we can go to some of the more recent paintings where the notes, there's a preponderance of notes that we see, and then we'll look at a few images, laptops, as we can see in this image in front of us, cell phones. I can't quite remember if there's a cell, I don't think in this one, but on the left there's file folders. Now I find them just sort of so fascinating. Whenever I see them, I kind of think of, oh, what's in there, and a stack of books and notes. And this recurs. We can go through the next few images. So from this 2020 image to this one, and I'm always looking for the cell phone because there's usually a lot of cell phones, but maybe not in this one. But again, the notes, the sense of time in the glass that's sitting there, maybe half empty, the notes on the floor on the right hand side. And if we go to the next one,
Jessica, I'm finding myself, just to go back one, I'm finding myself suddenly thinking about that William Carlos Williams poem about placing a jar in Tennessee in the wilderness. You know that poem, The Wilderness Sprawled All Around? I don't know, Margaux, if you know that poem. I'll send it over to you. But it's this idea in Carlos Williams of the glass vessel is kind of this ordering principle that sits at the center of the field of vision, and the wilderness sprawls all around. It's like there's this, it's the one thing that everything is in relation to. And I feel like, that's something that, that glass vessel or the votive candle that's usually, rendered in this incredibly precise way, in contradistinction to a lot of the things that's around it.
We're going to see those two things recurring in quite a few.
It seems like there's a wilderness sprawling around this glass vessel.
That sounds good, that poem.
Well,
I'll send it over to you.
Yeah.
Well,
and I like that idea that that it's not confined. That like because sometimes realism, painting something so accurately, it can be oppressive. I think it can really get you stuck somewhere. But if, as you say, the glass or the candle, there's focus there, and then the wilderness goes out. And
okay, so here's the embarrassing confession. It's called Anecdote of the Jar. It is not by William Carlos Williams. It's by Wallace Stevens.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Well, we could look at
W's.
The next one, because they're, the sense of things, kind of opening out is just called window. And that that moment of, if you want to call it realism, in the paper bag, where every crinkle, every bit of crushed paper is so visible, it's so tangible, and yet at the same time, the vinyl, I guess it's vinyl surface, the seat of the chair, and then there's this laptop, and they're both flying off like almost these abstract rectangles that are, if anything is grounded in the painting, it's the bag. And then of course the ubiquitous notes all across the wall. And I know that you sometimes tape up your pages there, and then they're filled over time. I don't know if you want to talk about how you fill them, but there they are in this very bright light coming from the window.
Well, I think I always really do like the dark and the night and the blacks in the paintings and the depth. It always just seems so promising and inviting and full of potential and full of change and full of life. And I think this was painted in 2017 when I was first
Yes.
starting the series. And I just wasn't writing any notes. I wasn't, I think this was like a tiny bit more of a depressive painting. And I just had all these blank pieces of paper on the wall and nothing, and just this bright window. Just, I guess still in the work, there's always a little bit of the day paintings and then the night paintings. And the day paintings, it just feels like, oh, there's nothing there. You can't see anything. There's no potential. There's no hope. But I mean, that's where I started, and then I found a bit more of the joy when I was
Yeah.
writing.
Well, there's something else happening in this work and the two that we looked at before and that recurs in your work, and this is about space really. And I think it's in Ben Lerner's beautiful essay where he talks about, he uses the laptop as a way of talking about this relationship. In a laptop computer, the screen can be, up and you're looking at it in front of you, or you can angle it or hinge it backward, as he says, and it's almost flat. So there's this relationship between the vertical and horizontal space that we start to see with those two desk works that we just looked at, where you're really pulled in by specific objects, and at the same time the canvas, the image seems to kind of rear up at an angle to meet your gaze. And I think the same thing happens to some extent to a large extent in this work called Window, where there's this moment of almost of abstraction where the seat cover and the laptop are going off into whatever space they want to go off in. The bag is grounding us. And at the same time, what is a tabletop made of chipboard, but it's just, the chipboard is just, spreading. And then we have a moment where it's held by the little globe and its shadow and by the grapes. And then there's very clearly a wall at the back with the notes. So we could maybe talk a little bit more about, time and space in your work. And you, in your interview with Sheila Heti in the book, which is a wonderful interview. And it's a very hard thing to do when two people know each other so well and are so close as you are, but it's very revealing. And at a certain point you say, when I started painting, I wanted art to be everything, to be able to do everything, to mean everything. But after a while, I realized I'm just a painter and it's my job to see. And unlike the photograph, would say that painting can represent several moments. And maybe let's go back now to 2013 in the next slide, to the first painting. Oh, I skipped this one. I want to say this painting also, Studio Door, happened in 2013. So you were saying that you were getting away from notes, but it's just like crammed with these little, whatever they are, reminders or notes. You've quite, it's quite tantalizing and frustrating that, of course, we don't get to see what was on those. But so another painting with a lot of notes. But in the same year, you made this painting. And I saw this painting in your studio, and I think I'm correct in saying it's the first really large painting. You can, people watching can see that it's 63 by 90 inches, and most of the other paintings are considerably smaller than this. And I think what stopped me in my tracks, aside from the fact that you had so daringly made an image and left all this white canvas around it, was and this sort of strange kind of tilting up of the tabletop, but that it should be so alive, so real, so of now, and not really following the conventions of the still life. We have, the bananas that are basically past their due date, the bottles from possibly the night before, and then again very carefully. You really like cabbages, so I think this was the first painting with cabbages. There are more. And then on the table, the time element, of course, represented by the newspaper, and up in the corner, a magazine sitting on a laptop. So it has this kind of everyday, honest, casual anyway, I don't know if you want to say if this is one of the paintings that opened doors to making larger images, or it just happens to be the first one.
Yeah, it definitely did. This one's called At Night I Painted in the Kitchen. And I was thinking of the idea of like at night when that depth you really want, the space for change and chance and invention, but sometimes it's too dark and you sort of want to comfort yourself with what really is there. So that's what I was thinking with this. But then when I painted it so large, I hadn't planned anything. I just pictured the kitchen. But it was a very big difference moving away from an object, which is a small painting, to being in relation to basically what starts to seem like a wall, you know, a very very big space. So
yeah, the scale of the body in relation to it is I imagine such a different way of working.
And the and getting to everyday work on it rather than this illusion or reality of making something all at once that's so harmonious.
Yeah, there's no attempting to make it look like it was a simultaneous. I mean, if you look at a painting of an interior by, you know, Vuillard or Berthe Morisot or whoever, there isn't a sense of sequential production, you know,
Yeah.
like, right? Because there's a consistent stylistic approach to everything on the surface.
Yeah.
I mean, there's variety and texture and pattern and so on, but it's not like completely different modalities of representation. Like there's the fineness of the cabbages and then the very cursory, you know, newspaper, and then that sort of cloud of brown that is, you know, kind of like a fog of, you know, and then the very crude bananas that are kind of like a whole other touch again. It's almost like a vocabulary of ways of making a painting.
Right.
I was just gonna say, I've said this a million times, but I really was, I had been making paintings thinking, oh, paintings are flat. And then this sort of shifted things where I was like, oh, paintings don't move. And that changed the idea of paintings for me a tiny bit, just thinking of what that could mean, what it could mean. Like even when you were showing the slides, even with the window one, the white one with all the notes, like it's so still the computer. There's so much stillness in that computer, and the computer sort of feels like so much time. So that was I sort of knew that. I understood that something was different about time with doing the large canvases, and there was this amazing freedom. And like with my paintings, I always want more space. They feel like that's just such a gift of what paintings can do. They can give you so much space, but then it's like, oh, they can give you more time too. Just really nice. But that stillness and the action with like this could, well, I mean, with the light here, it's a bit more of a still image. Like this could only be about 4 hours
in the day. That's right.
Yeah. Well, we could actually go from that At Night I Painted in the Kitchen with the motley bananas, which was done in 2013, and then jump 8 years to one of your most recent paintings, which is it's coming, which is the kitchen again, but quite different. I think we need to go forward.
Yeah.
For the next
Sorry,
one.
we're having a bit of a delay with the.
That's okay.
So the next one after this.
Yeah. Takes a while.
Carmela, can you advance one more time?
Oh,
there it is.
There we go. So we're back in the kitchen, but I guess I want to really address this. You know, you started to talk about it, time and space, and once I remember you saying that you couldn't think of anything better than being able to get time and space in painting. And well, tell us about this one. We do have the votive candle in the middle, so we've got that sort of point of fulcrum point where things, in a sense, it's a small object, but it's this bright presence, and things revolve around it. The glass, the plate in the midst of a meal, or what was left behind. And tell us how it started, how the painting started.
This was actually, because the way I paint, I just had a circle on the wall that said kitchen, as though that would mean anything to me, the amount of kitchens I paint. But so I knew it was a kitchen. I knew what kind of kitchen it was. But when I start painting, I just start with the first thing intuitively that feels right. So I started with the sink, and then I painted the lettuce, and I was like, oh, the lettuce is quite large. But and then I painted those orange cabinets and the fridge, but it was really difficult. This was one of the most difficult paintings. Sometimes they just come out so easy, but this was, I realized like it was quite when you never plan a composition, but you start with a sink like 2/3 of the way on this side, it's a little bit challenging. And that's really fun. A lot of my paintings start like that, but so it's a bit more of a puzzle. Like it's a quite simple puzzle, but it's a very pleasurable game when you're painting, especially if you're not doing any corrections. So to paint the sink, and then to paint the lettuce, and to paint the fridge, and then to know the table has to be very close. So just every time you add something, even if the table was wrong, it would be okay if you added the glass. So it's interesting. It keeps you awake when you're painting.
Well, I think that's one of the things that is just so compelling about the way you deal with space, is that we know we're in a room, but you give us this kind of license to roam around the points of interest that you have put together, rather than be in a conventional kind of perspectival space. So, every time I look at this painting, I'm looking at a different part of the painting. Yeah. My eyes are in constant movement. Maybe actually we can go to another painting that has really incredible space going on in it.
And with that one, I really like the sort of final, resolving it conceptually and intuitively. It was just like, oh, the table's just right there, right, impossibly right with whoever's standing in front of the canvas.
Yeah, it always amazes me how you can go, sometimes over days, from one element to the next, and yet somehow bring it all together.
Muddy brushes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that is one of the things that
just
while we're waiting for this slide to advance, I think that is one of the things that really holds these pictures together too, is this extraordinary color sense that you have that integrates everything. Even if, the wilderness is sprawling all around and things are flying off in all directions, there's usually some kind of organizing core. And then there's this amazing sensitivity to color. I mean, look at how those beautiful colors are all kind of tonalities that are in the same family, like they're just so perfectly calibrated, and it gives such a sense of a whole integrated world when you look at that picture, even if it is somewhat chaotic.
I never think I'm interested in color or beauty or anything, but then when I see this bathtub painting, and I just like every time the sky is that blue, it just drives me crazy. Or if I see like a cookie with icing that color, I just can't believe it. I don't understand myself very well still.
Well, these are the pleasures that get us through, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those works that just, it's just indelible in my head. Many of your works are, but this one, I'm constantly playing with it in my mind, every element of it has a place, and yet it's askew, it's wandering, it's grounded in time for sure, but also in the incredible quality you've given to the flowing water in the bathtub, and yet, you know, the t-shirt that may have been washed recently is just hanging there in space, which is fine, even though it's behind the sort of backsplash of the bathtub. And then there's these wonderful areas where, you know, up behind the t-shirt, where it doesn't really matter what's going on. But to our left, the whole painting kind of veers off, you know, I guess is it wooden wainscoting? It's like a fence, but it's not, it's inside. I think it's in the same room. And you have the painting within the painting happening. Again, it happens a few times in your work. Anyway, it's like, I think it's the most dynamic space in a painting that I can possibly imagine.
I think it's so funny. I was making all these paintings. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I have here. It's all just like the most ordinary paintings in the world. It's nice to hear that.
Margaux's idea of ordinary.
Yeah.
It's real to the rest of us.
But I think, yeah, it's almost like I have to follow a set of rules that I'm making up along the way. So if I wanted disjointed time and place, but if I made them coherent and blended, it would become surreal, and it would become impossible spaces and spaces people were trying to figure out. It's almost like the same thing with words. Like, I didn't want a t-shirt to have words on it in a painting, because I don't want someone to read it over and over again. Like, you want the removal of reading from the work. So, you know, the wine bottles with the lines, or the newspapers with the lines. Like, it just like, it's deeper than this, but it also does give your brain a break from this habit of going over these things and concluding things and understanding things. So so I was sort of tasked with the task of, how do you have these different elements without resolving them?
Yeah.
And
Make the space for that to stay open. Yeah.
Well, you do the same thing in the next image, which is a really recent work, which again, my eye just keeps moving around it. But this sense of time and space, kind of a continuity and yet the sense of duration all at the same time. So again, that sort of point in the middle that holds us is the cup. I think it's half full or half empty. And then to the right, that glowing jar, I can't remember because I can't see here. It's glowing anyway in the daylight, and the fabric behind it, which is the same fabric as the dark fabric,
above it,
draped over the window behind it. So you have a sense already of not even a progression, but of day and night almost colliding. And there they are again on the wall, the frustratingly unreadable notes. Above the notes, this wonderful image of waves and this kind of sense of the darkness of the evening on the left, so that we've got this arc of time all in the same space, but space of course changes with light. And well, it's obviously another favorite painting. I decided to put it in here. But I wanted to go, because we're getting on with time, to move from this painting directly to this one. So I think you can see where I'm going. And this takes us back 5 years between the painting of the cup with the small image of waves above. And so this notion of images that you gather in your mind and in your files, and well, the storm 2017 takes us to a very different kind of interior, the interior idea of the imagination, say.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Where did this image come from? I can't remember, Margaux. I think you've told me.
It was just a really strong desire. Wanted I just wanted to make this painting. I just kept thinking waves,
Yeah.
waves, and then I actually did go down to the lakeshore a lot, and a friend took me out in her little sailboat. I begged her to take me out when it was really windy. So I just was like, I never think of myself as being this kind of artist, but I was just like at the lakeshore staring at the waves for a month.
So the
Painting-
photograph that
painting was very
appears,
quick.
the photograph that appears on, or the image that appears on the wall
Yeah.
in the previous is not an image from out of your archive. It's an image, it's a painting within a painting.
It is.
in cup,
It
up
is
on the wall.
actually. It is actually this painting because I
Yeah.
had made a print and I put it on.
Rendered small. Yeah.
I put it on the wall. It was sort of the only painting that I had kind of understood. So I didn't have it anymore, and I put it on the wall to think about it. And then when I was making this painting, I'm so good at not thinking. I didn't even realize I was painting that painting.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe people think it's just a photograph, but I
The
didn't mean to
conscious
be
mind is
so
fully in
self-referential.
control.
Yeah.
Great.
And like 3 years later in 2020, you the next image is I think of these two images as sort of twins or sisters, and again that sense of this sort of emanating waves going out of these tree branches, and yet somewhere within that cool dark hiding place.
Yeah.
And this is something that is very near your house, this tree,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I stared at that tree outside of my house for a long time. This one took me longer to paint, and as soon as I started painting it, the tree started to die. And I got very nervous, and I think some vines were climbing up it, and I kept, anyway. But yeah, when I was halfway through this painting, I realized it was the same painting as the waves, but which is so nice as an intuitive artist, have those echoes and those reassurances that you only have one track sometimes. No, whether you like it or not. But this was helpful because it was a bit about the time too, a little bit more concretely, that you can have that motion but still represent so much time. Like I couldn't put a person in the paintings because a person was like a still moment. It represented a very static moment of time, unless they were sleeping. Or I think that's my new challenge, how to bring people in but still maintain the time and space.
Yeah.
But with the tree, it was I realized, oh, okay, it's a static image, but it's alive, and it is quite expansive with time, I think.
Well, let's go a little further into that interior space, and we're back in 2013 with the cave at the end of time. And if we can just go to the next, and then with Painter. So that cave is now in your head. I think it's your head.
It's
So we'll run through a few here because we're probably going to run out of time. And then another kind of being within one's own little imaginative space, the reader. We've all done that, in bed maybe under the covers with a flashlight, or just comfortably there reading. And then moving out into a larger space, the next one, the dreamer. And here we've kind of got the lived, very much the lived space. This is maybe after being at the Matador. Someone's asleep. There's been some partying going on. It's the late night, or maybe the morning after the night before. And we could go one more. These are all paintings in between 2012 and 2014. So this little living room, again, there's that body sleeping on the couch, and some things tossed on the floor. And the sort of penumbra of maybe dawn is coming on the right, but we're in that gloomy darkness of the room. And then I just want to jump us right up to 2021 to this incredible image called Pillows, which seems to me to have that same kind of wonderful lived in disarray about it. There's the cell phone on the left on top of the notes, the pillows, the blanket, some of your cards up at the top with the votive candles and the
This is a
ubiquitous.
huge, this is
Yeah,
a huge
this is a
painting.
huge
to tell
painting.
people.
It's
like
the
you walk
70
into
by
it.
100 inches, exactly. Tell us about this painting. It's very recent.
Well, now that you've talked us through that sequence, I can see the sort of the mess on the ground in the earlier works.
Yeah.
It is a little bit like the shiny object, the glass, with the everything falling away from it. And I see that even in this painting, that's here too. Like, it's not such a messy room, but it's still like, oh, the stars sparkling a little bit in the shadows, that the garbage gets to turn into the stars.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even do that very intentionally, but it is nice to have that potential and that promise and that hope in the dark spots, literally. And just even to have more depth because of that, because of the sparkly garbage. So thanks for the tour. I can understand a little better. Yeah, this was such a pleasure to paint.
It shows.
I think the bigger they are, the more I'm just sort of facilitating something. Yeah, I on this one I had just written ground, so I painted the ground. And I really couldn't paint until I was like, I can't start this painting until I find a striped pillowcase, and it was lockdown. So I like texted 3 or 4 friends, do you have a striped pillowcase? And one person came through, but it's that thing. Maybe that's just how I procrastinate. Like, I need to go down to the lake, or I can't start until I have a striped pillowcase. But I really, the striped
pair of
pillowcase.
moccasins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or down at the bottom there.
Yeah.
Well,
Those are my friends. Those are very old. And so the painting started just with those 2 pillows.
Yeah.
On the ground.
Floating. Yeah.
And it's
Well,
nice
Go ahead.
the way I paint and the space, and almost the giant canvases give you more leisure and more flexibility, so you can have like one part of the canvas is quite ugly, and that even helps sometimes to bring things, like to see the more beautiful things. Like, it's like that carpet on the bottom, it's just like, that'd be hard to just have one painting of that. And I just wanted to point out how ugly one part is. But that's really
Anyone could pull it off, Margaux, it would be you.
Yeah.
We could, just to, as we wrap up here, I think we can go out into some social spaces of different kinds of interiors. And I think, Sarah, this is the painting that you referred to at the Matador. This is 2006. So that's 15 years ago.
I know.
Yeah. And then in 2014,
there you are again.
8 years later, there you are again. So with the bar, and this leads me not so directly, but to a very recent painting called Meeting Place, where, as the title implies, this is some kind of platform or veranda where there has been or there will be a gathering. It's destined to be a social space, or has been a social space, and yet it's in nature, surrounded by darkness. So it's inviting and yet foreboding. And then I want to go to a kind of a twinned painting. It's a night painting with outdoors to fire.
I'm just getting there.
Yeah.
There it is.
And I was just thinking, reflecting on this past year and the long winter of COVID, it seems like this is the ultimate COVID image where you have to gather outside with a fire, urban fire. And Sarah, I know you have lots to say about this painting.
Well, it's just, this is what's so wonderful about having this painting in the show, apart from the fact that we were very lucky to acquire it at the McMichael as a promised gift for our collection. Thank you to Andrew Dunn and Christine Dunn who made that possible for us. But this painting is both sort of, last winter, outdoors became indoors and everyone improvised in different ways to create interiors where there was no, interior as we tried to gather outside. So there's this kind of paradox there about these arrangements that we all made to be together. And that desire to be together and gather around a campfire, gather around a fire together. And I think, part of the impetus in going for this particular picture for our collection was definitely, the way in which it's a kind of 21st century rebuttal to the tradition of, outdoorsy, woodsy, camping pictures in the group of seven and landscape and being in the great outdoors. This is being in the great outdoors of the urban scape, which we've strangely all become accustomed to. I don't know about you, Margaux, but I feel like I've walked this city and experienced it as outdoor space in a way that, I certainly never did before March of 2018. But, I think this is also a great Canadian painting. And I don't mean to be a ardent nationalist or anything, but, it's just that it speaks to this condition in Canada in settler culture. At the McMichael, a third of our collection is Indigenous, the other 2/3 is settler culture. And there's this thing, of course, that Margaret Atwood famously wrote about in the Canadian imagination about what lies beyond, what is out there in the darkness and, the natural forces of, people coming to this land and, being immersed in a landscape they didn't understand. And of course, the climate is no joke and, the animals are no joke and everything. I feel like that spirit haunts the other meeting place picture too. Is it a meeting place for people within that lit space, or is something coming to meet you, from beyond in the darkness? And so I think there's a kind of, a thrum of kind of trauma underneath the surface of these paintings that makes them really important, contributions to the history of landscape painting and just Canadian culture around this idea of, sheltering ourselves from what is that we can, is so vast. It's so, it's so other to those of us who came here from other places. So we're very, very thrilled to have it in the collection of McMichael, and our thanks again to the Dunns, but, and our whole governance community for coming together around the careers of women artists, at the McMichael. And of course, Margaux's show is on at the same time as Uninvited, which visits the careers of a whole host of Canadian women, both settler and Indigenous from a century ago. And I can't think of another, living artist that I would rather see in sisterhood with that generation 100 years before. It was Jessica, just a wonderful sense of timing as always, to work with you on this. And Margaux, I don't know if there are further thoughts you have about fire. You've had a chance to look at it at the gallery and also to look at it at the art fair a week ago. And so it's no longer your baby in your own, your own creative womb. It's now out in the world. How's this picture reading to you as time goes by?
Well, it's been interesting talking to you both at different occasions and having some of your thoughts sink in a bit more and seeing my own work a little better with time. But just in the talk tonight, and I guess too, at the center is a fire, which is not so soothing, but there's a lot of different fires there, but there's also that garbage again on the ground and sort of the meaninglessness a little bit and the thoughtlessness and when things don't fit and when they're disordered and they're not sure where they're coming from, from what you were talking about. That certainly seems like.
Yeah, there's a real I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this picture that we realized when we were fooling around with it, making the invitation, is that, it's off center a little bit. So there's a bit of instability in the fact that the composition is pulled slightly to the right. Just, you don't really even notice it, but I think it probably gives a lot of energy to the scene that we kind of pick up subliminally. And then there is this kind of opposition between the kind of chaos in the middle. I mean, what is that orange fireball that's sort of rising up? And then there's kind of a glowing thing below it to the left, and then other embers lower right. And then there's the fire is kind of caught in that glass vessel or whatever that is that's in the foreground as well. So it's kind of, reiterated and finds another sort of optical life, closer to us. But all that kind of morphosis that's happening in the middle of the picture is such a contrast, I think, to the crispness of those chairs and those two very firm, parallelograms of the blue that sit on either side of it. So, there is always, I think, what I'm seeing tonight, looking at it again and spending time with you, is this dialogue between, something that is an organizing principle and something that is out of control. Whereas you let it be out of control, you let the painting lead you, but there's things are held and then released in these pictures in ways that are just so, so masterful. It's just a pleasure to think about them and to look at them.
I can say, I guess we should have to finish up, but I can say one more thing that, I started out, I didn't have a good sense of meaning, and the world didn't look very beautiful to me or healthy. And that was right from the beginning. Somehow that was just my sense. And so I think I worked really hard at trying to find it beautiful, like trying to see the harmony or the order where the order wasn't there, even if you're just on the highway. And then sometimes I worry I did too good of a job.
Oh no, chaos is happening.
Okay.
May I interject with a question that came up that I think is related nicely to this line of discussion, which is, Margaux, to what extent or if any, do you plan a composition when it's time? We heard about your gathering clippings and putting things in folders, but when it comes to, making the first mark, to what extent do you plan your composition?
Not at all. Not at all.
So can you speak a little bit about that?
I think I can remember making table and chair, one that
see if I can go back.
And I started that painting, and I was just like, man, that chair looks really good today. So I painted the chair.
I'm gonna go find it.
I'm gonna go back.
It's one of
Sorry,
my first ones, so I can kind of remember.
About the
There's
fourth
a little
image.
delay in the
Thanks for going back.
Yeah.
So just bear with me for a
It's nice
moment.
to be able to review it. It's nice to review it.
There we go.
This is one of my first big ones. This was 2016. I think that's the year. And
Yep.
so just the chair looked really good to me. So I painted the chair. And then I thought I had so much to say, and then I painted something else.
Too long. It took too long to get back. Now there's a pressure. You got to talk for at least as long as it took me to get back to the slide.
So I knew I was painting a table. Like I knew I was painting the kitchen. But I just painted one thing a day. And then the only thing that I changed in this painting was behind the chair, there was a window. And then I realized, like, oh, you don't, because this was one of my first paintings. I was like, no, that the escape isn't out the window. It's the darkness, the promise, is the threat or the excitement isn't out the window. It has to be in the table.
So you kind of go down into this rabbit hole of the table.
Yeah. So in the table, I put in that a darker area with a sort of hard to read object, and then what is a little bit like flowers. But it was nice for me that it was a little bit illegible, because I needed all of, like, what could be the sky, but I wanted it in the table.
So what is the is that another one of your Value Village finds?
Yeah.
Yes. That is a gorgeous painting. I think Catherine Mulheron found it and I bought it from her.
So you're a regular
$100.
scrounger at Value Village. You're going to inspire us all. We're gonna be going at your sources now. This is
Oh, it's really fun. You can just scan. You can scan. Yeah, and there's like every 5th time there's some pretty amazing painting there.
yeah.
You have to go a lot.
Like this
Margaux?
battleship painting. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
This one came from Valley Village too, right?
No, that was just in a shop downtown. It was
Oh.
like for $60. And then I got home, or 40, I don't know. And then I got home, I was like, $60 for a painting.
And you were telling us the other day that it's a painting of explosions, which I think is wonderful,
Yeah.
given the kind of chaos of the room itself. You know, it's a kind of
And the
Those are
plumes
plumes
of
of
water
water.
going up. Yeah.
coming up. Yeah.
And then the water coming out of the tap going down. And, yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah.
It's
Can I
all
Again
ask-
with, yeah,
Oh, go ahead. No, please.
I with this too, just thinking about time and how to represent water and time. Like the solid water coming out of the tap is almost more expansive than the reflection in the water, but then the explosion sort of, that echo kind of stills it down a little bit too, the echo of the explosions.
Can I ask one more question before we close?
Yeah.
Insofar as you're willing to tell us, Margaux, what effect did the pandemic have on your artistic practice?
In what way? Like in how I painted or?
Yeah.
Anything.
Your process, or was it, you know, a good time for you creatively?
Yeah.
No distractions, right?
No distractions. I mean, it's a real pleasure, like, to get to cancel out the world. And my work is always just quiet and pretty solitary. So, and I still got to see my friends around the fire, so that was helpful. So yeah, I think it made me a writer probably, because because Sheila usually comes in my studio to work, but we stopped doing that. So we met around a fire and shared writing instead, which was very different.
And you had a writing group that you were meeting with as well. We had some of them out with us the other night, which was great. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how much stimulation can a woman take? You have your
Yeah,
writing group,
exactly.
you have your studio practice. It's enough already.
I was doing yoga on Zoom in the morning and then a writing group every 2 weeks. It was like, I'm so full. This is perfect.
So how is it? Well, you actually have the time to absorb the experiences you're having. I mean, I had the similar experience in COVID. I found it a wonderful time to think about things and marinate in things in a way that felt really, I was very lucky, you know, roof over my head and groceries and people I love, you know, so I was lucky, right? But, you know, as were you, but, you know, it's, how are you finding, I mean, the follow-on question would be, and now? Because things are starting to rev up again. And are you like slamming the brakes on and saying, I don't want this?
As you say, I was very lucky. And I, you know, during making all these paintings, I couldn't, there was something about them, like I couldn't distract myself while I was making them. So I was really forced, not only the pandemic, but suddenly the way I was painting really forced me to deal with myself. So, so first, I don't know what happened, but I'm really excited to be in the world now. I'm like, okay, although I've been in the world a lot the last 2 weeks and I can tone it down a little bit.
Now you're ready to let it slow down a bit again.
Yeah. But I think I've always just been so happy in my studio and I'm excited to sort of see that art outside of the studio and in people and in other places I go and sort of bring that with me if I can.
It all comes back into the studio eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. I might bring in people next time. There might be some people around.
Okay, we'll be looking for it.
Margaux, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for giving us a little window into Margaux's world. If you're
and can I interrupt
Please.
just to say thank you, Sarah and Jessica. You guys are amazing.
Oh, we had such a great time working with you.
It was so,
Loved every
thank
minute
you so
of it.
much.
Again,
It's
don't
been
forget
such
this
pleasure.
beautiful thing. Don't forget this lovely book.
So
It's really-
this book is available in our shop only.
Yeah.
So please come and visit us, get another dose of Margaux's World by coming to see this exhibition at McMichael and pick up the book while you're with us. You can also support us by scanning that QR code. It will lead you to, you know, some wonderful place where we make it very easy to support us in lots of different ways. Jessica, thank you for leading us in this conversation and for all that you do in being part of our kind of circle of collaborators. And Sarah, thank you as always for being the framework in this discussion. To all of you out there, thanks for joining us tonight. We hope you will subscribe to our newsletter and just get in on everything that we do so that you'll have a warning of the next time we do a conversation like this one. And with that, I say thank you again and good night.
Good night, everyone. Thanks
Good
for being
night.
with us.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.